Now, what are movies if not grand illusions intended to trick the viewer for better or worse? Films are all about casting a spell on the audience, about manipulating them into getting emotionally drawn into a story. Now, this can occur one of many ways, but one especially interesting feat of narrative chicanery involves removing a character from the fold for a certain amount of time, only to return them later for dramatic or comedic effect. It can be a tough trick to pull off in films with small casts and limited locations, requiring directors to get creative about how they choose to distract their audiences from a character's absence. But when it works, it really works, ensuring viewers are jolted by a surprise return or, depending on the type of movie it is, perhaps extremely amused. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is Whatculture.com, and these are 10 movie characters they wanted you to forget.
Want to stay safe online and save big? Get up to 76% off a 2-year NordVPN plan, plus 4 months free and up to a $50 Amazon gift card. Just scan the QR code or click the link in the description and it's all yours.
Number 10. Sergeant Dignum, The Departed. Now, Staff Sergeant Sean Dignum certainly makes quite the impression in the first 2 acts of Martin Scorsese's The Departed, a stern yet quick-witted, wisecracking cop who doesn't suffer fools lightly. And though Mark Wahlberg's terrific performance netted him a Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination, his character disappears quite abruptly ahead of the film's climax. Following the murder of his superior, an enraged Dignum lashes out at Sergeant Sullivan and is placed on suspension for 2 weeks. The rest of the movie plays out with undercover cop Billy facing off against mob rat Sullivan, while it's assumed that Dignum won't be coming back. But in the film's very final scene, some 30 minutes after we last saw him, Dignum makes a surprise reappearance, hiding out in Sullivan's apartment in order to shoot him dead in revenge for killing the captain. It's all the more unexpected given that this never happens in the Hong Kong film upon which The Departed is based on, which is known as Internal Affairs. Between this and keeping Dignum out of the audience's mind for so long, it ensured his last-minute return was a genuine crowd-pleasing shock. Number 9. Alec Golden Eye. Now, to be fair, the trailers for GoldenEye ruined what would have been a bloody awesome twist, but if you didn't pay much attention to the movie's marketing, you were in for quite the surprise when the film's primary villain finally showed up. GoldenEye's pre-title sequence involves a botched mission in which James Bond and 006 assault a Russian colonel's compound. 006 appears to be killed when the Russian colonel shoots him in the head, and for a whole hour that indeed seems to be the case. The movie spent most of its first half establishing several villains, before then circling back to reveal that 006 faked his own death and is in fact the movie's big bad, being the leader of the focal crime syndicate. It's a great rug pull if you don't know what's coming, and the film gamely tries to put him to the back of your mind by focusing your attention elsewhere, even if the marketing unfortunately worked actively against that. Number 8. Danny McGrath, Billy Madison. Not all movies that want you to forget about a character necessarily do so for the big dramatic gotcha. Sometimes it's just for a bit of a good laugh. Case in point, we have the classic Adam Sandler comedy Billy Madison, where upon being bullied after re-entering high school, Billy decides to make amends with those that he himself bullied as a kid. He starts by calling and apologizing to Danny McGrath, an old classmate that he tormented at school. Danny accepts Billy's apology, and the scene ends with Danny hilariously crossing Billy's name off of a people to kill list that is stuck to his wall. That seems to be the end of the gag, except Danny unexpectedly reappears at the very end of the film some 20 minutes later, showing up just in time to shoot the villain, Alec Gordon, in the ass with a sniper rifle before he can shoot Billy's love interest, Veronica. To cap it all off, Billy then quips, "Man, I'm glad I called that guy." Comedy is all about timing and upending expectations, and this utterly nailed both. Number 7. Catwoman, The Dark Knight Rises. Catwoman is obviously one of the most iconic superheroines ever and plays a major supporting role in The Dark Knight Rises. All the same, Christopher Nolan makes a sly attempt to nudge her to the periphery during the film's third act, as a returning Batman heads into the heart of Gotham City to take on Bane. We see Catwoman using the Batpod to blow a hole in one of Gotham's blocked entrances, after which we don't actually see her again for an entire 10 minutes. During this time, the focus is on Batman getting outnumbered by Bane and his secret accomplice Talia al Ghul, as well as the general chaos that is happening around the city. Talia then leaves to continue massacring those civilians that are fighting back, while Bane proceeds to execute Batman. But just at that moment, Bane is blasted with a high-caliber round, revealing that Catwoman arrived just in time to blow Bane away with the Batpod. Keeping her off screen for an entire 10 minutes in the climax of the film was clearly a concerted effort to divert the audience's attention elsewhere, enough so that they didn't see her sudden return coming. As divisive as Bane's death is, the element of surprise is certainly effective. Number 6. The Other Bastards, Inglourious Bastards. Now, depending on who you count, there are about a dozen members of the Bastards featured throughout Quentin Tarantino's revisionist war epic, the majority of whom are accounted for by the film's end. But there are a few whose fates are left unknown: soldiers Hirschberg, Kagan, Zimmerman, and Sakowitz. Though we all have visual confirmation that the rest of the Bastards either die or survive, this lesser-known quartet basically dips out of the movie before the climax and is never seen or heard from again. One suspects that this was an act of narrative streamlining on Tarantino's part. He presumably wanted a punchy ending without having to take time to address the fates of the minor bastards, even though to this day many wonder precisely what actually happened to them. To the same token though, how many of them can you actually name without having to look him up? Number 5. Little Tully, the Addams Family. In the 1991 Addams Family film, the secondary villain is Tully Alford, Gomez's crooked lawyer who plots to rip the Addams Family clan off. His blissfully ignorant wife is Margaret, and together they have a son referred to only as Little Tully. Now, Little Tully appears in the film for just a single scene at a school play, after which he's oh so conveniently never heard from again. Given that his father ends up dead and possibly buried alive while his mother runs away and marries cousin It, it's fair to say that Little Tully has had quite the traumatic week. Yet despite Margaret showing up again in Addams Family Values and having given birth to a son with cousin It no less, her firstborn isn't given even a fleeting mention. Evidently, given the utterly cruel hand that Little Tully was dealt by the circumstances of the plot, the filmmakers basically just wanted you to forget that he ever existed, rather than fixate on what horrors became of him after losing both of his parents. Number 4. Mustafa, Austin Powers, the Spy Who Shagged Me. Dr. Evil's fez-wearing henchman Mustafa played a small but hilariously memorable role in the first Austin Powers. He was horribly burned for failing to unthaw Dr. Evil's cat Mr. Bigglesworth correctly, and because that didn't kill him, a guard enters the room and shoots him dead off screen. But Mustafa returned in the sequel when Austin and Felicity Shagwell travel back to 1976, where Mustafa would of course still be alive. When Austin and Felicity are interrogating him, Mustafa is shot with a dart by Mini-Me, which causes him to fall off a cliff to his apparent demise. Yet of course, Mustafa survived and cries out in pain off screen as he attempts to get back onto his feet and summon medical help. Now that's the last that we see or hear of him in the film proper, but an hour later, the post-credit scene returns us to Mustafa, who asks if the movie is over and if anyone in the audience can summon help, before again, he tries to stand up on his feet and it doesn't go so well. Now the gag wouldn't work nearly as well if we'd totally forgotten about Mustafa during that interceding hour, ensuring that his inexplicable return sends audiences home on a riotous final gut laugh. Number 3. Angela Ashford, Resident Evil Apocalypse. Paul W.S. Anderson's Resident Evil movies may not be particularly good, but that doesn't make this act of character erasure any less weird. The second film, Resident Evil Apocalypse, introduced Angela Ashford, the daughter of Dr. Charles Ashford, who created the T-virus in order to treat a genetic disease that she suffers from. As such, Angela is immediately established as one of the series' most pivotal characters, and Apocalypse ends with her riding away with Alice and the other heroes. But Angela was bafflingly absent from the next film, Resident Evil Extinction, which offered not even a passing mention of her fate. We never saw Angela in the 3 subsequent sequels either, leaving fans to speculate on precisely what happened to her. Yet the answer becomes a little clearer when you consider that in the novelization of Resident Evil Extinction, Angela is actually shot dead by Alice while under the mind control of Umbrella head scientist Dr. Alexander Isaacs. Basically, it seems that the filmmakers realized that they were in a bind. They didn't want to saddle the franchise with a major child character, but also didn't want to commit to killing her off as was shown in the novelization. And so it's a bit of a Schrodinger's cat situation, where you can either deduce that she is still alive somewhere or died between the second and third films somehow. Either way, Anderson and company clearly hope that you just forget that she was ever a thing to begin with. Number 2. Mr. Orange, Reservoir Dogs. Mr. Orange, played by Tim Roth, spends the vast majority of Reservoir Dogs laying mortally wounded on the floor at the criminal gang's warehouse, having been shot in the aftermath of a diamond heist. Though Orange is always present throughout the film, and flashbacks nicely fill in his backstory as an undercover cop, it's actually easy to forget that he's just hanging around in the periphery. Now this pays off quite spectacularly halfway through the movie, when Tarantino focuses on Mr. White torturing and preparing to kill a kidnapped cop, Marvin Nash. The theatrical horror of Mr. Blonde cutting Nash's ear off makes it easy to forget that Mr. Orange is just a few feet away, albeit badly injured, such that when Orange interrupts the torture and shoots Blonde dead, it comes as a genuine surprise. And number 1, Manny Go. And finally, we have Doug Liman's cult classic black comedy Go, which focuses on a young supermarket cashier attempting to pull off a daring drug scam in order to pay her rent. One of her pals is Manny, who misguidedly takes 2 ecstasy pills at once and gets very, very high as a result. And when her scam gets found out, she stashes Manny in a nearby alley and promises to return for him. But moments later, she's hit by a car and incapacitated, marking the end of the movie's first act. The rest of Go branches out to explore numerous different perspectives of the drug deal before finally circling back to her at the very end as she wakes up in the hospital. She then goes to work where her other friend Claire asks where Manny is, causing her to finally remember where she stashed him the night prior. And so, well over an hour after we last saw Manny, she finally returns to the alleyway and retrieves him, pale and shaking uncontrollably, but thankfully still alive. The gag wouldn't have worked nearly as well if we ever cut back to Manny throughout the film. And given that the following hour plus is jam-packed with insanity, there's plenty to make viewers forget about his very existence. Poor old Manny.